Well, good morning to you all. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, this is one in a series of labour market information sessions which are targeted at careers professionals, delivered by industry experts, with the aim of ensuring that your information, advice and the guidance is underpinned with up-to-date and accurate labour market information. We're producing a flyer of all of these sessions, so if you found it useful and you want to share with your colleagues, we'll forward you the flyer so you can distribute it further. A very warm welcome to Robin Gowers this morning. Robin is going to be delivering a session around developments in the agri-tech sector, farm to fork. He achieved a PhD in economics from the University of Essex, worked for 5 years with PricewaterhouseCoopers based in the city. He's now a senior lecturer at Whittle University College, where he manages and delivers on both undergraduate and postgraduate courses. Robin's led the development of Whittle's new MBA in regenerative food systems. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Robin. I think within the chat, if people have questions, pop those into the chat. The session lasts for half an hour, so we're hoping at the end there'll be an opportunity for some questions. Thank you, Robin.
Okay, that's great. Thanks. I'll just try and share someone. Just can you see my my presentation okay now?
Yeah,
yes, we can see that, Robin.
Okay. Wait a minute. I'm just making it full screen. Come on. Is that better?
Yeah, that's good.
Excellent.
That's
okay.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for inviting me along. And for the introduction, so I've got about, I don't know, 15 minutes of slides here, 15-20 minutes, then we can have a brief chat about it. And you heard a bit about my background there. The reason why I sort of moved back into academia and Whittle is Whittle's a land-based university. It's got an incredible history. If you talk to anyone in the land-based sector, farming sector, they've heard of Whittle. The current Environment Minister, George Eustace, is an ex-Whittle student. And what I want to get across in this session is the monumental opportunities that are out there that I'm also looking at with both my FE and my HE students. You've got my email address there. If anyone wants any further information, any more details, then please take a note of that. I'm more than happy to give further talks about this, to sort of come in, have a chat to students when we can. And of course, please ask me loads of questions. I'm not sure whether I'll be able to pick up any messages that come in during my talks. If you chuck them in when I come out of the full screen session, I'll be able to see them, and we can sort of have a chat about what's currently going on. And as I mentioned, the monumental changes that are happening in the farm to fork sector and the opportunities that link into it. So basically, the brief plan is I'll sort of set the scene, give a few high level details about the sector, numbers, statistics and so on. I'll then bring that down to sort of looking at the local region, what's happening there. I will give a brief chat about what we're doing at Whittle University College, and then I'll open up to some questions. What you can also see here is a report that I was a joint author on. We got some funding from CLAP. This was before the actual lockdown. The COVID and the pandemic obviously had some big issues, so I'll also briefly talk about some of our findings from that report as well. So initially, some of the high level statistics. One of the reasons why this excites me and why Whittle is in a fantastic position is the food sector, the farm to fork sector, is the biggest industrial sector in any economy because everyone's got to eat. It's often overlooked. We take it for granted. And in the UK, latest statistics a couple of years back, 13% of all employment was in this farm to fork sector. Agriculture is a small piece of that, but it's a very exciting piece at the start of it. That's basically 1 in 8 of all UK workers are involved in this sector. And as I'll also state later on, we're on the verge of a 4th industrial revolution and a 4th agricultural revolution. Governments worldwide are really waking up to the incredible opportunities. You probably heard that Facebook have rebranded themselves as Meta. This is Web 3.0. And as I said earlier on, how we produce, distribute and consume food will completely change in the next generation. We're starting to see those changes. And I'll also give you a few examples, a few numbers, and a few companies that exemplify what is actually happening. You can sort of see the numbers employed. Say agriculture and fishing quite small. The restaurant sector is a lot bigger, but you probably all seen the delivery guys going around. Just Eat. These guys didn't exist 2, 3, 4 years ago, and they've now got billion pound businesses. A few high-level statistics here. An often quoted one is one on the left-hand side. The food and drink sector, as said, is the biggest industrial sector. It's about twice as large as automotive and aerospace combined. It's a fantastic source of export earnings. And I was talking to some of my students yesterday, actually, and I was looking at some of the numbers behind it. And if you look at some of the big companies like Tesco's are worth about £22 billion. Diageo, the guys behind Guinness and so on, massive exporter. They're worth about 4 times as much as Tesco's as well. And so you can sort of see this is a fantastic opportunity for the country and for the region in terms of increasing our exports, linking into the technological changes out there. And what you'll also notice on the bottom one, this was published about 2 years ago, I think, and there was a need then for 140,000 extra workers. And I'll talk about the 2 broad types of workers that are needed and the skills that they actually companies are actually looking for. A few more statistics. This region is huge in terms of that sector. I won't go through all these, but it just jumps out that in terms of certain areas, the southeast is a big player. It's a breadbasket of the UK. It sort of leads in terms of the pig herd, flour base, etc. So it's a very important part here. Everyone sort of looks at Essex especially and sort of focuses on more the urban areas, but it is still a huge rural economy, and with a massive coastline which we need to sort of exploit a bit more. The government is also realising this. You can see here there's now 6 food enterprise zones in sort of the southeast area. As I sort of said earlier on, the agriculture farming side is quite small in terms of employees, but also quite exciting. It's the food processing, the restaurant trade, that whole supply chain that is a big player in terms of employment numbers and need for skills and need for knowledge and development of further skills for either new employees, for school leavers, or for career changes. It's one of the other areas which we're getting a lot of interest in, but people from the pandemic have realised they want a change, they want to work outside, they want to work with something that they really enjoy. I've just put down here a number of companies from the region that are some major players as well. To give you another statistic, one of the bigger players, not a British player, but it's focusing a lot on the UK's Lidl and Aldi, both privately owned, 2 of the biggest supermarket chains in the whole of Europe. Lidl announced last year that they're going to spend £15 billion on their UK supply chain in the next 5 years. As I said, to put that into context, Tesco's market value is 22 billion. Sainsbury's is about 5 billion. So Lidl are going to spend 15 billion just on the UK, their UK supply chain going forward. So it shows you the sort of investments that are going in. Another really good example, just outside of Lincolnshire, Ocado. You've probably seen the delivery lorries going around. About 2 years ago, bought the UK's largest indoor, or bought a part of the UK's largest indoor vertical farm, but where they grow the greens inside, for £17 million. And this was when this group employed just 8 people. So it shows you the opportunities that are out there. The sector's facing a perfect storm. I can't emphasise the monumental change. We've had Brexit and the labour supply issues linked into that. Also the pandemic and the knock-on supply chain disruption that it's actually caused. And the food supply chains have actually held up quite well. And we've got climate change, the move to net zero, and ESG, which stands for environmental, social, governance, which there's a huge amount of push going on. With funds in the city, and again, another thing which I've said to my students to look at is virtually every major company now has a head of sustainability. You didn't have that 5-10 years ago. So again, there's a lot of opportunities opening up. We've got government regulation. On the top right hand side, you've got Henry Dimbleby's report into the UK food system. This is the first major report for 75 years into that whole UK food supply chain. So the government has sort of realised with Brexit, etc., how we're going to subsidise food producers, farmers, what are the incentives, etc. On the bottom, you've got Professor Dasgupta's report. It's about 650 pages. It's a huge report looking at how the food system has affected biodiversity, and there's a role for the government to incentivise food producers and so on to focus on that. You've also got something I've not got in here, which I think I'll mention later on, is the move to regenerative and circular systems. Yet the current economic system is take, make, use, throw, and we've got to make it more circular. So there's some huge opportunities linked to that as well. As I mentioned, there's massive change, but also monumental opportunities. As I briefly mentioned, we're on the verge of a fourth industrial and agricultural revolution. So as I said, I think I said before, how we produce, distribute and consume food will completely change going forward. That transition won't happen overnight. But it offers significant rewards for those who can be part of it, who understand what's going on and the opportunities out there. So it's a fantastic opportunity for businesses in the region to sort of take a lead here. And as I mentioned, there's significant money coming. I did see yesterday that I think it's in London, just out on the outskirts of London. Another vertical farm startup, is quite a young one, started by a husband and wife team, raised funds which valued it at £100 million already. So that is going to be one of the big things. As I also mentioned at Rittle, we've just launched, or will launch in September, an MBA in regenerative food systems. So we're looking at the whole of the food system and try and seeing the linkages between it rather than looking into silos. As well. As I mentioned, I was co-author of this report that we gained funding from CLEP, and I wrote it with colleagues at Hadlow College, NIAB in Kent, the sort of the fruit research location, and also Plumpton College. This was done over, we started it just before COVID hit in, and what really jumped out in terms of looking at rural skills and training and the support needed is there's two big areas. There's lots of areas, but there's two main ones. The first one is what you sort of call more lower level skills, level 2, level 3, just basic skills. There's a big demand from employers for people who understand how things grow, basic things like picking stuff, people who are reliable, who will turn up on time. And the other side which jumped out was farmers, businesses working in this supply chain also realise how things are changing, the movement towards use of technology, the monumental opportunities. So they're looking for more of the higher level qualified people, also career changes as well. And what we also found out was, as I say, Plumpton, Hadlow and NIAB is quite similar to Rittle. We're quite small. We can offer the basic training, the apprenticeships, etc. But in terms of specialist skills, one of the things which we put forward to CLAP was to push for some joint training. If you're going to look at the high level technical skills, it's all around data. Data analytics is the key one I tell my students to focus on. Artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things, all these kinds of things, and the push was to try and get something for all of us to work together to offer it in each location. The key skills we found when we were talking to various groups was basic stuff. It's interesting, a lot of tech companies are going into it. For example, the UK's biggest landowner outside, I think, the Queen and the Church and I think Cambridge University is James Dyson. In America, the biggest landowner is Bill Gates. These guys realise you can apply technology to growing stuff. We've got to do it because by 2050 there's going to be 1.5 billion more people on the planet, and we've got to produce more food, more sustainably, more efficiently. It's got to be nutritious, and it's got to be cheap. And from talking to Rittle's contacts, what really jumped out was a lot of them were saying they get contacted by technology companies saying that they've started on a vertical farm and it's gone wrong. And they understand the technology, but not basically how to grow stuff, how to look after animals, etc. The other one, not just for the farm to fork sector, the top course at I think it's at Harvard University, they give first year students a chance to study any course they want, and the #1 course across all subjects is data analytics. Farms, the food supply chain creates huge amounts of data, and it's understanding how to collect, manage, and get the gems out of the data. Other skills which we're getting is just basic business knowledge. A lot of the opportunities, I mentioned this couple who just started up that vertical farm, now valued at 100 billion. It's just offering the basic business skills. How can you raise funds? How can you register a business, etc. And as usual, what we found was it's just basic soft skills, complex problem solving, communication skills, being able to talk to people, etc., etc. As well. At Rittle, a few things for those of us who, for those of you who don't know us. As I said, Rittle's a specialist land-based university. This gives a list of courses that Rittle actually offer at FE. As I said, we're famous. If you go to any farm in the country, you mention Rittle, everyone's heard of it. There's very few places that offer similar things. Our most popular courses currently at the moment are vet nursing, veterinary physiotherapy. We're getting a lot of interest in the conservation, the regenerative rewilding type stuff. The equine side has also done quite well, and the horticultural landscape side. Rittle is just outside Chelmsford, excuse me, as it says here, located 2 miles away. It's a great place to work. As you can see, it's a working farm. We have cattle, pigs, we've got the horses, and so on. So we've also, as I said, we've also invested quite heavily onto the sport side as sort of another area. As I said, we do get a lot of mature students who are looking for a career change and to get a course to get them the skills to make a switch of a career. Approximately got about 2,000 students. It's about 50-50 between FE and HE, so it's quite unusual to cover both. We offer full-time and part-time courses, higher certificates to postgraduate degrees, and a lot of sort of short courses as well. Things like basically chainsaw management, etc. So that's basically, I think that's the last slide. So I'll come out of it and stop sharing if I can. Hopefully you're all back, and I'll open to sort of any questions. It's sort of a brief overview into that sector. As I said, it is huge. The food sector, as 1 in 8 employees in the UK work in that sector, and it's not just the 4th industrial revolution, it is the 4th agricultural revolution, and it is, the money coming in is not big compared to technology at the moment, but it is jumping up significantly. And as I said, the big guys are all in their play, as all big players, so there is a huge opportunities for our students. As I say, our higher education students, they're all walking into jobs at big salaries because people are looking for people who understand how to grow stuff and marry it to these big changes coming in. So I'll open up to any questions.
Robin, thank you very much. The first question is here. Can you see the questions now, Robin?
Wait a minute, I'll just open up the Okay, yeah, I think I've got a couple. Okay, first one, the key skills required, is it mainly for food producers, farmers? Is anyone working in that whole supply chain? As I said, the numbers in farming are quite small, but a good example of that, there's been a massive CES in America, is the show that all the technology companies go to. And what I say to my students, if you want to understand the potential, have a look at John Deere's share price. It went like this and then has gone like this because they've said they're still a tractor company, but they've just released their first autonomous tractor. You'll probably rent the tractor rather than actually buy it. And the tractor is a data monster. It just gathers the data up, and they'll then utilize that data to sell to the farmers to tell you need more fertilizer here, less here, etc. as well. So it's the big guys are out. So it is that whole food supply chain. Other good examples, like say Deliveroo, Just Eat, billion-dollar companies which didn't exist 5-10 years ago. Are now out there. As I mentioned, we're on the verge of the fourth industrial revolution and the fourth agricultural revolution. The third agricultural revolution came after the Second World War, where the aim was produce as much as possible, as cheap as possible. And Norman Borlaug, the only guy, agriculturalist who won the Nobel Prize, was head of it. It's a so-called green revolution. It wasn't green really because it used a lot of pesticides and so on. And as I said, there's going to be 1.5 billion more people. We've got to produce more effectively, more productively. It's got to be more nutritious, and it's got to be cheap as well. And that is an incredible challenge all along that supply chain as well. Just looking for others. Okay, another one came in. Have you noticed the difference in the profile age of undergrads applying feed course? Yeah, what is quite interesting is what I've noticed in the last couple of years is Rittle's classic undergraduate comes from the farming background, and we still get that. They come from farming families, but we're now about 50-50 with people who have no background in farming, and they've decided this is a career for them. They want to make a difference, and these are mainly people who are looking at the regenerative, sustainability, circular side. And it's quite good. You get good arguments between one group, like the farming group, saying we're doing this because of that, and these guys, you're doing it completely wrong. And I say you've got to understand it, our incentives and how we're paid to produce. As I said, with the current agriculture bill going through, the incentives appear farmers will be rewarded for rewilding, growing more in more environmentally friendly ways. No one knows exactly how yet, but there's a lot of debate about that, and we are getting more mature students as well coming on, career changes. People have some very, as one guy I'm teaching now he's a qualified lawyer, and he's doing a course and wants to, once he gets his degree, make the jump, either set up a business or work with a startup in this area. Okay, another one. Do you also link to courses, careers to do with actually creating the technology you need farming now? Yeah, I mean, we a great example of that is was it last year, 2 years ago? I won some funding to have a couple of vertical farms on site, and this is with an old partner of ours. It's an ex-student actually came to us, and he's a managing director of the UK's biggest tomato and cucumber and pepper propagator, and he initially came to us saying, please give me some students that I can train like I was trained. We can't get the people on board. And we were talking about stuff, and the opportunity came up to apply. I think we won about £100,000 to get funding to get a couple of these indoor farms and play around with them. So they provided the tomatoes, etc., and we looked at the energy usage, different lighting systems. What's quite interesting with indoor farms is you assume they use a lot of energy to heat. They don't. The problem is the heat, it's too hot. If you've got lighting systems, they're chucking heat in an enclosed space, you have to cool them down. And so we were looking at solar panels, different lighting systems, etc. And the findings look pretty good at the moment, and we're looking for extra funding for that. And we get the students involved in terms of that as well. So all of our courses, the undergrad was revalidated last year. So if you come onto Rittle's undergrad scheme, you do regenerative farming systems, because that's what not all, but many of our farming contacts were saying, this is where the market's going. So we sort of, I think that was the first one in the country to do that, but a lot of the people are actually doing it.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, someone mentioned how to access it. Yeah, I think hopefully that is the someone's put a report link up. I'm not sure who done that, but thanks for that.
Yeah, I think Hyla's done that. Thank you. Any more questions? No? Robin, thank you. Hyla, I think you were going to ask a question, were you?
Yeah, it was just, I know we've got a lot of people on the call that are from schools, so working with younger age ranges. And like you said, there's a lot of people coming into the industry now that have got no family background in agriculture or sort of the associated. What bearing in mind how many jobs you said are available across the country, what do you suggest that we would say to young people that are sort of don't really know, perhaps they live in, like me, Southend, so don't necessarily see or wouldn't associate a lot of the jobs that they see with that sort of industry? Almost, I suppose, what's the pitch, I suppose, really, to those young people?
Yeah, to be honest, it still has the image of not being a valid career. It's the type of career you go, if you can't do anything else, you can go out and pick a few bits and pieces, etc. We need to get around it. As I said, it is the biggest industrial sector. We all have to eat, but like Henry Dimbleby's report clearly states, we just take food for granted. We assume food is abundant, you get 24 hours a day, it is dirt cheap, etc. Once people are now realizing that has got to change. As he says our food system is making us sick. Basically, if you look at all the knock-on effects, the government has a way to lead into it, but it's just getting talking to people about, okay, what are you eating? Where did it come from? Who actually produced it? Whenever I buy something, look where's it sourced from? I bought some peas from Kenya the other day. I think, how on earth has this got into the shops? It's also the supermarkets. Before Christmas, I was in Aldi. Everything was 9p, I think it was, the potatoes and so on. And yeah, we one of the big opportunities actually is things like food waste. A third of all food is wasted along that whole supply chain. So if you could come up with a business that nails that, that is going to be a multi-billion-pound business. As I said, all the big guys are in it. Have a look, James Dyson, Bill Gates, Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk. They're all got investments into these areas, and it is very exciting to be involved into looking. It's why I made the jump to Rittle, because I'm seeing the monumental amount of money that is coming in, and there will be that need. But it's trying to get beyond that. If you do it, you're not just going to be out in the field picking stuff. Or whatever. So yeah, it needs to be, as I said, not just us. We need to link in with industry, get the government support with schools, etc., to really get across. Okay, it'd be quite good whenever I talk to students, I basically say, okay, what is your image? And it is that classic farming image, and we've got to change it.
Robin, thank you so very much indeed. You know, on behalf of all of us, I'd like to say a massive thank you. It's been so interesting to hear about all of the opportunities at different levels. You know, some of us are working with young people, some are working with career changers, unemployed residents. So it's been very, very useful. Encourage all of you, if you through your schools, if you want to contact Robin directly in terms of any presentations or anything he can do to raise awareness of the sector within schools. The next session, Hyla, is when? Can you remind me, please? I should have the schedule up, but I don't. We will be sending you invitations.
I'll put a link in the chat to all of the next ones. Sorry, my brain went as to the next date.
Yeah,
but as you mentioned, I'm more than happy to go into schools. I was doing it a lot before the lockdown, not just to talk about like the food to farm sector, also about the opportunities linked into the technology of the fourth industrial revolution. It's an incredible area.
Thank you very much indeed. Good to see you all, and look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robin.
Okay, thanks a lot. Bye.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you.